Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And for the first time since the 2032 to 2033 offseason, our Rockies are not headed into the offseason as World Series champions. We were attempting an unprecedented sixth straight World Series title this year. But despite the best record in baseball at 110-52, we were picked off by the New York Mets in 7 games in the League Championship Series. The Mets went on to lose the World Series in 6 to the Houston Astros, who ended up your 2038 World Series champions. So we knew the streak was going to end at some point. Didn't really understand how lucky and fortunate we were to have won 5 in a row. But now the goal is to get back up on that horse and hopefully start another long streak of winning the World Series. We're going to start off this offseason by doing our annual roster review, starting to put a plan together with the help of the worldwide scouting department on who we should bring back, who we should pay, who we should not pay, who we should trade, who we should just move on from, and the many other different decisions that we've got ahead of us. As I mentioned, we will be making those decisions from a relative position of strength after going 110-52 during the regular season this year. And our team statistics were perhaps even more dominant than that. First in the league in runs scored and first in almost every batting category. First in the league in runs allowed and first in the majority of pitching categories. Second in the league in steals, third in base running, first in zone rating, third in defensive efficiency. Just had a dominant season across the board with these Rockies, and going to have some decisions to make this offseason as we walk through our roster. I think the primary area where we've got a lot of decisions to make is with the left-handed hitters on our roster. A number of them are potential free agents or facing option years or just in situations where we may want to move on from them. But we are in a situation where we're going to probably have to bring some of them back just to ensure that we've got a somewhat balanced lineup and that we may remain as effective as we possibly can against right-handed pitching next season. And since we were talking about our left-handed hitters and some of the decisions we've got ahead of us, we'll start off talking about our position players this year. Nate Harris, still in the mix to be our backup catcher next year, got caught up in a numbers game this year because he still has option years available and spent most of the season in AAA. Did go 1 for 7 as a September call-up as a third catcher on our roster, and he actually made the playoff series for our divisional series matchup, although he was moved off the roster for the NLCS when Phil Dingwell finally got healthy after missing the entire season. Harris, still a very good defensive catcher, not a total embarrassment at the plate. The issue is he's set to make $3 million next year. That would be a relatively expensive insurance policy to stash him in AAA if we do make an arbitration offer to him, but certainly something to consider. Our longtime theoretical starter, former first-round pick Mike Girard, who I call a theoretical starter only because he's been injured so much throughout the course of his career, became our de facto backup this year, although he was really in a platoon where he played primarily against left-handed pitching. 46 games started, 63 games overall, and facing predominantly lefties, he finally kind of had the offensive achievement that we thought he might have when we picked him in the supplemental first round back in 2029. Hit .278 with 12 homers and 40 ribbies in those 176 at-bats. Put up a 123 WRC plus and a WAR of close to 2. Remains a superior defensive player, although someone who, as we noted, has had injury issues over the course of his career. Set to make $8.5 million next year. That, if we intend for him to be our backup catcher, is getting extremely expensive. And although he was, as we talked about, very effective this past year, particularly against left-handed pitching, where he hit a ridiculous 408 with 11 of his home runs in just 71 at-bats. I don't know that a specialist against left-handed pitching as a catcher is worth $8.5 million a year. And the reason he would definitely be our backup is that J.D. Lee, who we picked up in that big trade with the Marlins a few years ago, is a left-handed bat and probably the only left-handed bat on this team who definitely will be back with us next year. He's a above-average defensive catcher, although not as good as either of his potential backups, whether it's Gerard or Harris. Lee was fine this year, a 95 WRC plus and a 3 WAR, which is kind of what we think he is. We definitely get spoiled by that ridiculous 337 batting average he had in his first year with us. The batting average dipped to 262 this year, 13 homers, 63 ribbies. Still certainly a useful offensive player, and as I noted, a slightly above average defensive catcher who will certainly be our primary catcher against right-handed pitching going forward. So the big question is, do we bring back Gerard or Harris as the backup, or do we perhaps bring them both back, stash Harris in AAA, or do we bring neither of them back and go in an entirely different direction behind the plate? Moving on next to our infielders, we kind of have a sneaky decision here with our longtime left-handed hitting first baseman Ryan Stone. For much of his career, he's kind of been like the third best hitter on our team, very productive, under the radar. We've got an $8 million team option on him for next season. Very extreme righty and lefty splits as he's had for most of his career, although his ability against right-handed pitching is beginning to regress a little bit. And he's coming off a year where he hit 268 with 31 doubles, 21 homers, 80 ribbies. All sound pretty good and aren't that far off what he's done over the course of his career. But it all added up to a 104 WRC plus and a 1.9 WAR, which were some of the lowest numbers that he's ever put up in his career, actually outside of his first foray into the majors back in 2030. This was the worst season that we've gotten from the former first-round draft pick, at least if we believe in WRC plus as a metric, and WAR he's tied with where he was a year ago. But he has definitely been steadily regressing as he's gotten through his late 20s and into his early 30s. $8 million for a guy who still does have decent speed, stole 16 bases in 20 attempts, a fan favorite with good personality for the clubhouse. I think I'm inclined to bring him back. He's spent most of his career in the 3-hole for us against right-handed pitching. Now when we look at him with average home run power, average eye, slightly above average contact, and still above average gap power, probably not your prototypical number 3 hitter anymore, so it's possible we move him down in the lineup a bit. But given, as we're going to talk about, we could be very light on left-handed hitters next year, I think for $8 million, I'm kind of inclined to lean towards exercising our option on Ryan Stone. But obviously, as we go through the entirety of our roster and the choices we've got ahead of us, would love to know if there's different perspectives or similar perspectives from members of the Worldwide Scouting Department. One guy who will definitely be back, the 24-year-old second baseman Johnny Castillo, won the American League Rookie of the Year a year ago when he tied for the lead in home runs, and he had a very strong sophomore season this year. 282 average, 37 homers, 114 ribbies, put up a 134 WRC plus and a 4.4 WAR, so arguably a little better than he was as a rookie. He is not a great defensive second baseman by any stretch of the imagination. Zone rating and defensive efficiency both just a little bit below average for the National League. But with the bat that he brings forth, certainly anticipate that he'll be with us. Still a guy who's making the major league minimum next year, but likely to begin getting more expensive going forward. Jose Gonzaba is a guy who we signed as a minor league free agent when he joined the American Major Leagues from Mexico a few years ago. Made his major league debut in September for us, was 0 for 7 with 6 strikeouts, negative personality traits, struggles to make contact, and as we talked about, is going to strike out an insane amount of times. Does have some speed, is capable of playing multiple positions, and has a little bit of pop in his bat and excellent gap power. He's a guy who's still got option years left, making the major league minimum. Certainly view him as organizational depth, but in a perfect world, I don't think he makes our 26-man roster. Infielder Trent Kaysen is a former 13th round pick who is now getting into his arbitration years, set to make about $3 million this upcoming year. He's been a solid utility infielder for us over the years. Not as much action this past year. Hit .289 with 13 homers and 38 ribbies, though, in just 173 at-bats. Played primarily against left-handed pitching, where he is very good. He's also a versatile defensive player. Certainly would anticipate that Kaysen will be back with us next year, playing regularly against lefties, and then as a utility infielder against right-handed pitching. Jarrett Woods, although he's older than Kaysen, made his major league debut this year, and he was pretty much our everyday third baseman. Batting average just .248, 18 homers and 66 ribbies, 102 WRC plus, a 1.4 WAR. He's a switch hitter, although he's not as good against left-handed pitching as he is against right-handed pitching. A guy who's making the major league minimum. Would think that Woods and Kaysen could both be competing for starting spots, could both end up as utility infielders. Odds are, my expectation is that one of them will be our third baseman. Very possible that we'll end up going with a platoon among those two, with Kaysen playing against lefties and Woods against righties. Derby Mahez, former first-round pick out of UCLA, moved into more of a utility role this year for us. Hit .245 with 13 homers and 48 ribbies and 257 at-bats. Also stole 12 bases. Very versatile and good defensively. Great influence in the clubhouse. Good speed. Popular with the fans. Put up a 117 WRC plus and a 2.9 WAR. The bat overall, not really special at this point. He played primarily against left-handed pitching, more of a utility guy against right-handed pitching. The salary is going to be around $6 million next year as he heads into his final arbitration-eligible season. Certainly expect that Mahez will be back with us. Certainly expect he'll be playing shortstop against left-handed pitching. The big question is whether he might end up being our everyday shortstop, and that's because as we get to another left-handed hitter, Elian Pena, a little bit of a decision to make here. Similar to Mahez, excellent speed, very good defensively, a lot of positive personality traits. Hit .253 this year with 12 dingers and 23 steals, 83 WRC plus and a 2.7 WAR. The left-handed hitter is brutal against left-handed pitching, but he still holds his own against righties. He is set to make $11 million next year, probably a little bit overpaid for what he is at this point. And given that although he is a left-handed hitter, he is certainly not anything special against right-handed pitching, I think there's an argument to maybe try to trade Pena away to save a little bit of money. But that could leave us in a situation where when we look at the rest of our infield, it's all right-handed hitters, or in the case of Jarrett Woods, a switch hitter who's not particularly special against left-handed pitching, or right-handed pitching for that matter. So there is a scenario where if we moved on from both Pena and Stone, we've really only got one left-handed bat out of our catcher and all of our infield positions, which probably is a little bit light. So I tend to think Stone or Pena will be back with us next year. And it's possible that they both end up back with us. If Gonzaba does end up as a 4A guy for us since he's got options left and he's kind of our insurance policy in the infield, you certainly could argue that Stone, Castillo, Kaysen, Woods, Mahez, and Pena, which were our 6 infielders this year, is not a bad way to go into the 2039 season, particularly given that Pena and Stone are the only 2 on the wrong side of 30 at this point, and they're both still in their early 30s. And last, but certainly not least, when we talk about our position players, we'll move on to our outfielders. A guy who will definitely be back is the former first-round pick out of southeastern Louisiana, Mike Castro, a year after leading the league in at-bats, runs, and hits, finishing 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting, which was won by his teammate Johnny Castillo. An excellent sophomore season from Castro as well. Led the league with 52 doubles. Also led the league with a .411 on-base percentage, 94 runs scored, 82 ribbies, hit 18 homers, stole 28 bases, ultimately had a 5.7 WAR on the season. He's a guy who we have signed to an extension, should receive some support for Most Valuable Player this year, although we don't think he's going to win it, and he's probably not going to finish high enough in the voting to be eligible for a prospect promotion incentive pick, similar to last year when he finished 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting. Probably going to be just a little too low in the MVP voting this year to earn a PPI pick for us, but still has potential to be a big-time player for us going forward, like his durability, like his bat, like his speed, and he's certainly a competent defensive left fielder. Ted Miller, a left-handed bat who opted in to qualifying offer we gave him last year, so he is headed to free agency unless we try to sign him over the next few weeks. Played in all but 1 game for us this past year as our primary designated hitter. Led the league with 87 walks. Those are the positive things about him. His batting average fell to .218, 24 homers and 87 ribbies, only an 85 WRC plus, and he was actually below replacement level, if you believe in those more advanced metrics, as a $21.4 million player. He is a guy who is still a very competent bat against right-handed pitching, struggles against left-handed pitching. I don't, as I think about Ted Miller, see any scenario where we can move on from both him and Ryan Stone. I think we need at least one of those, at least solid to good bats against right-handed pitching still in our lineup next year, given that Stone's set to make $8 million on a team option, while Miller right now is looking for $22.5 million a year over 7 years. My initial inclination is we probably bring Stone back, even though if we look at his ratings, he's not quite as good against right-handed pitching as Miller is, but kind of feeling like we've got the best years out of Miller's career at relatively bargain prices. He's going to be 30 before next season. He's not special defensively. As we noted, he played just 24 games for us in the field this year, and he was a below-average defensive player out there when he was. I think I'm leaning towards letting Miller hit free agency. Doesn't mean that we can't rule out bringing him back if maybe he lingers on the market a little longer than expected and his demands come down, but $22.5 million for 7 years, even that means in a best case scenario, maybe we can get him at 18 to 20 million for 4 or 5 years. Still seems expensive to me for what he is, given his age and the fact that he's coming off a season where he was technically below replacement level. Chris Roy has been a utility infielder off and on for us the past couple of years. Hit 246 with 5 homers and 27 ribbies and 240 at-bats this year. Had a more prominent role due to Phil Dingwell missing most of the season and Kevin Roberts Jr. missing a couple of months. But ultimately was a below replacement level player, 84 WRC plus. And Lil D also just played out his last option year. If he can make it through waivers to AAA, we could perhaps keep him in the organization, but certainly not a critical player. And if he makes the roster as our 5th outfielder, probably means that the offseason wasn't as productive as we might hope it could be. Anthony Pack Jr., another left-handed hitter, set to make $9 million next year. When we look at his ratings, he's below average against left-handed pitching, and he's still technically a below average major leaguer against right-handed pitching. But he is coming off arguably the best season of his career. Tied for the league lead with 7 triples this year, 14 homers, 60 ribbies, stole 41 bases, ultimately hit 275 with a 108 WRC plus and a 4.8 WAR. Remains an outstanding defensive center fielder with a 14.4 zone rating, 1.082 defensive efficiency. Arm a little bit weaker, although on paper it looks average-ish. But he is a 2-time Gold Glove winner. Excellent speed, given how important a good defensive center fielder is, even though he's not special with the bat. And we think he probably got very lucky this year, particularly illustrated by that 320 BABIP that he put up for us. Tend to think we probably bring Pack Jr. back next year to be our center fielder against right-handed pitching. Mike Castro, who's our left fielder against right-handed pitching, is who played center field for us most of the year against left-handers. So conceivably, when we think about lefties, tend to think Lee will be back with us, tend to think Pack will be back with us. The questions start coming around Miller, Pena, and Stone. As I noted, I think just in terms of a bat that will be respected by other teams and can be productive, we probably have to have Stone or Miller back, and with Stone set to make at least $10 to $15 million a year less than Miller, think that Stone's probably the way to go next year. Pena, such a good influence in the clubhouse and so good defensively, I think I'm inclined to bring him back. But moving on from Miller, we definitely don't have a lot of big left-handed bats in our lineup next year, even if we do bring back everybody else. Phil Dingwell missed the entire year, injured himself during spring training with a ruptured Achilles, did come back just at the end of the season, only played in the National League Championship Series for us, where he went 1 for 7 in very limited playing time. Looking at Dingwell's ratings, he's kind of a platoon guy at this point, which certainly isn't what we were hoping when we drafted him with a supplemental first-round pick back in 2030, but a very good hitter against left-handed pitching, a guy who's not a total embarrassment against right-handed pitching, but typically you're hoping for your corner outfield positions for a bat that's a little better than not a total embarrassment. Was very productive back in 2037 when he moved into more of a role focused on playing against left-handed pitchers than in his rookie year in 2036 when he was in the lineup every day. If he can stay healthy, envision a similar role for him next season, hopefully somewhere about 300 at-bats, playing primarily against left-handed pitching and as a pinch hitter and utility outfielder against righties. Last, but certainly not least, is Mr. Five Tools, Kevin Roberts Jr., former first-round pick back in 2026. He ended up tying with his teammate Anthony Pack Jr. to lead the league with 7 triples this year. And I've said this in the comments to some of you. At this point, now that Roberts Jr. is on the other side of 30, what I really hope is that while he's still essentially in the prime of his career, we get one more year with 150 games out of him. Played just 140 games a year ago, and then just 104 games this past season. Basically missed a third of the season, and he could have had a magical year if not. He was a 30-30 guy, 32 homers and 30 stolen bases, despite not even starting 100 games. Before that first injury, he was on pace for a 40-40 year, and you could argue that if he got lucky, he could have even chased Ohtani in a 50-50 year offensively. Ultimately, when all is said and done, though, still a very productive season. Hit 309, an OPS of over 1,000, 183 WRC plus, and a ridiculous 6.7 WAR. Again, only in 2/3 of a season. If he had been healthy the whole year, could have potentially had a 10 WAR season for us this year, which would have been the biggest number of his entire career, which says a lot given that he's a perennial Silver Slugger, perennial All-Star, perennial winner of postseason MVP awards, and a 3-time MVP. Now at the age of 30, he is still signed for 4 more years up through his age 33 season, starting to make a fairer salary, although the deal that we signed him to is still very good for us. As Roberts Jr. sits here 30 years old, certainly you would think more than halfway through his career. 829 runs scored, 822 ribbies, would think he could get to 1,500 in both of those categories. 279 home runs, you would think he certainly has a shot at getting to 500. 1,221 hits, though, it would be a very big upset for him to get to 3,000 hits, particularly if he can't stay in the lineup, which has been a little bit of a struggle for him over the last 5 years of his career. He's played over 150 games just twice, as opposed to it was over 150 games or more each of his first 3 full seasons in the majors. Still normal as far as his injury proneness, still an incredibly important player for us. The 183 WRC plus that he put up this year was the best figure of his entire career, and certainly have high expectations that he's going to remain a very productive player and try to claim a lot of all-time Colorado Rockies team hitting records before his career is over. Watch out, Todd Helton. And we'll turn now to our strong pitching staff after reviewing our strong position players. Leo Martinez has been our ace for the last few years, signed for the long term. 18-7, led the league with a 0.95 whip this year, as he often does. Just over 200 innings pitched, only allowed 12 homers, 42 walks, a 6.2 WAR for the 3rd consecutive season, so another outstanding year for our ace, although after he won 3 straight Cy Young Awards from 2034 through 2036, probably will get some support this year, but probably will not earn the 4th Cy Young Award of his career. Lefty Bob Russell, who we picked up in a big trade with Atlanta a couple years ago, 11-10 with a 4.03 ERA, a WAR of over 3. He's a guy who's set to make about $8.5 million next year in arbitration. As we saw at the end of the last episode, ownership also wants us to sign him to an extension. Certainly a guy with really good stamina, an outstanding splitter, and 4 other major league pitches in his arsenal. Ground ball tendencies and his outstanding control really have played well for him in Colorado. Walked just 38 batters in 199 innings this past year. Not looking for incredible money. Wants a little over $100 million for 6 years. There are 2 arbitration eligible years included in there, though, so still uncertain whether we'll lock him up for the long term, but he could be a good guy to supplement behind Martinez as our number 2 starter for the foreseeable future. Bernie Barrera, scouting discovery from a decade ago, back in 2038, has turned into a pretty good major leaguer for us. 19-3 this year with a 3.70 ERA. Led the league with just a 2.51 BABIP against him. Put up a 2.4 WAR. Not a superstar, but a good, solid, middle of the rotation type starter for us. Barrera set to make about $9.5 million next year, and then he will be arbitration eligible. Don't know that if both Russell and Barrera will be with us for the long term, but certainly think that probably at least one of them will need to be. Part of the reason we say that is that lefty Noah Schultz, heading into the final year of his contract with us, $25 million, and it will almost certainly be his last year with us. 10-6 with a 4.26 ERA. The positive thing, he was healthy largely after pitching just 3 games a year ago. But certainly as a guy who's now in his mid-30s and is fragile physically, it's going to be pretty hard for us to extract $25 million of value out of him next year. If he has a season relatively similar to what he did for us this year, we probably can't complain too much as long as he's healthy. Our number 5 starter this past year was Aaron Bell, 13-9 with a 4.55 ERA. He's a guy we picked up 3 years ago in a trade with the Cardinals. Really hasn't developed into what we had hoped. Been a good solid pitcher, 2.7 WAR this year, and kind of a 2 to 3.5 WAR pitcher over these past 3 seasons with us, winning combined 38 games against 18 losses. So he's been useful and productive for us. A guy who's heading into his final arbitration eligible year, set to make $9.5 million. A 6-year extension for him is about $61 million. So Bell is certainly cheaper for us to lock up than the likes of Bob Russell, or for that matter, Bernie Barrera, who has 6-year demand at about $101 million, which is basically exactly the same money that Russell is looking for. So Bell is cheaper, but you can see that outside of Martinez, this entire pitching staff, as far as our starting rotation, could be turned over the next year or two. And Bell, with the money that he's set to make next year in arbitration, could be a guy that we look to trade this offseason to open up that 5th spot in the rotation for someone who's younger and cheaper, and we think hopefully just as effective. Our lefty closer, Adonis Valer, is another decision. We've got a team option for $8 million for him next year, although he had a couple of unfortunate implosions in the playoffs. Was an outstanding year for him. Led the league with 76 games pitched, 9-4 record with 41 saves, 2.30 ERA, and a WAR of close to 2. Given how effective he's been as our closer the past few years, $8 million price tag for a good lefty closer does not seem exorbitant at all to me. Tend to think we'll exercise that option. Righty Chris Kennedy is a guy that we've got locked up at a very reasonable amount going forward. Had a good season for us, although interestingly, he's kind of been trending negatively over the course of his career. He had a 3.6 WAR in 2036, 2.9 in 2037, and down to a 2 WAR this year. Still an incredible guy at striking out batters, 124 strikeouts in just 75 1/3 innings pitched. 5-4 record with 4 saves and a 3.23 ERA. But unfortunately, he was a big problem for us in the postseason this year. Just 6 innings pitched over 7 games, and he had an ERA of 12. You can see before this year, he had been pretty much lights out in our 3 previous playoff runs where we won the World Series championship. But with that 0-1 record and a couple of meltdowns and that 12 ERA over 6 innings, he was certainly a contributing factor to us not getting back to the World Series this season. Righty Justin Gibson ended his streak of leading the league in games pitched as he missed several weeks with an injury. Still did lead the league again in holds this year, although it was not a vintage Justin Gibson season. 8-3 record with those league best 24 holds, but an ERA of 4.33 over 72 and 2/3 innings, a 1.6 WAR. He has opted into the final year of his contract at $15 million. Certainly an expensive reliever at this point, but he has had a really nice career for us. As we talked about, he led the league in wins or in games pitched 6 straight years before injuries kept him from doing that. He's led the league in holds 8 consecutive years at this point, which is just an incredible statistic. He's basically the Babe Ruth of holds at this point. Very important arm out of our bullpen, and although he's expensive, I think that he is a proven commodity. He's been a member of all 6 of our World Series championship teams, and will almost certainly not be looking to trade him before next season, even though he's being fully paid. Josh Joss, like Kennedy, is more of a bargain reliever who we signed to a good contract. Dandy, former second-round pick, a good solid major league reliever, although he also had an off year by his standards, a 4.34 ERA over 47 and 2/3 innings, less than a win above replacement level, and his whip was a rather sickly 1.57 as he walked 28 batters in 47 and 2/3 innings this year. Probably can argue he got a bit unlucky with that 362 BABIP against him, so certainly would expect a better year from Joss next season. So the back end of our bullpen should all be intact for next year. Jason McKinney, a lefty that we picked up in a trade last offseason with the Giants, had a 4.50 ERA over 54 innings for us. Still better than half a win above replacement. He is a guy who is still making the major league minimum. Certainly should be playing a prominent role as a lefty reliever out of our bullpen next year. The righty Melvin Reyes, 3.34 ERA this year over 35 innings pitched. Spent the entire year in the majors with us as a right-handed arm out of the bullpen. Like his durability, and he was pretty effective this year. He's a guy making the major league minimum. Does still have options left, given the depth of our pitching staff. He'll probably be, sadly for him, fighting for a roster spot with some of the other guys that we're going to be talking about shortly, which is part of the reason why I think we may look to save some money and perhaps trade away Aaron Bell, or if there's no trade value there, maybe just not make him an offer in arbitration. We can shop him right now and kind of see what, if any, market there is for the veteran. Can get a pricey Wyatt Langford. If he were a left-handed hitter, even though he's making a lot of money, that might be something to think about doing. Walker Jenkins is a left-handed hitter, but he's signed for 3 years and making even more money. I don't necessarily think that that is the right answer for us. Definitely not going to get a true difference maker for Aaron Bell, not that we were expecting to, but if we do try to get that salary off the books, we can get something back in return for him, and maybe use him in a package to open up some spots. As I said, a 5th spot in the rotation if we move on from him, and that may make it easier for some of these secondary arms in the bullpen to get onto the major league roster. I tend to think if we move on from Aaron Bell, that David Guadron probably gets the first crack at being our number 5 starter. First-round supplemental pick from back in 2035. Spent the entire year in the majors this year. 6-1 record over 33 games, including 5 starts. Put up a 2.68 ERA and a WAR of over 1 for us. Not quite as good as he was in his rookie year when he started 20 games for us, but certainly see him having a potentially important role going forward as a long reliever, or as I mentioned, if we move on from Bell, probably gets the first crack at being our 5th starter. And if we have some injury issues and we bring Bell back, Guadrone would probably be the first guy to move into the rotation. Another guy competing for a rotation spot and or a spot in the bullpen is the righty, former second-round draft choice Jesse Hoffmeister. Spent the whole year in the majors as a long reliever for us, a 3.82 ERA with 100 strikeouts over just 75 and a third innings pitched. The stuff is incredible. He does have a tendency to walk some batters and give up some home runs. Only walked 20 this year and allowed 9 home runs over 75 and a third innings pitched. I could argue that maybe he got a bit lucky with those numbers, particularly given his extreme fly ball tendencies. An incredibly imposing pitching arsenal with really good stamina. Certainly having the likes of Hoffmeister and Guadrone waiting in the wings makes potentially moving on from Aaron Bell this offseason something we would consider, and it also makes us think we're not in bad shape if over the next couple of years we move on from one or two of the combination of Russell, Barrera, and Schultz. Lefty Jake Lyons, another guy who will be fighting for a roster spot next year, former second-round pick out of West Virginia, split the year between AAA and the majors. He's been ugly in his brief forays into the majors, 5.59 ERA a year ago, 8.64 ERA this year. In his defense, he's only pitched a combined 18 innings in the majors over those 2 seasons. Does have those fly ball tendencies, which aren't necessarily going to be perfect in Colorado, but certainly a guy who should be competing for a spot on the 26-man roster next year. Can say the same thing about Danny Dominguez, a 8th-round pick from 2031. Made his major league debut this year with a 4.32 ERA over 8 1/3 innings pitched. Not the same type of endurance as the likes of David Guadrone, who we talked about as a potential 5th starter, or even the other potential 5th starter that we talked about in Jesse Hoffmeister. But Dominguez, certainly a guy who should be competing for a long relief spot, could start for us in a pinch. And the likes of Guadrone, Hoffmeister, and Dominguez make us think that, again, we could be turning over large chunks of this rotation in the next couple years. Last but not least, Kikaku Kawakami, the 26-year-old, is fragile physically. Made his major league debut a year ago in 2037 and was pretty effective for us. Unfortunately, missed all of this past season with an injury. Kawakami, now a guy who's out of option years, certainly looks like a more than competent potential major league starter or right-handed long reliever. But he could get caught up in a numbers game for us. Tend to think that definitely need to move on from Bell when we look at having the likes of Guadrone, Hoffmeister, Dominguez, and Kawakami who could be competing for starting and long relief spots. And again, a year from now, likely to move on from Schultz. And Russell and Barrera's futures for the long term with us are also uncertain, at least right now. So a lot of decisions to make over the medium term in terms of our pitching staff. The one thing that we know for sure, Leo Martinez will continue to be at the top of our rotation as long as he's healthy. And although we're still not moving forward in this offseason yet, next episode we'll do our annual review of our minor league system. Before we do start moving forward, wanted to at least share our initial thoughts about the development lab. Did consider strength and conditioning programs for a number of our veterans. Unfortunately, 3 of our higher quality veterans, Kevin Roberts Jr., Johnny Castillo, and Mike Castro, none of them are eligible for strength and conditioning programs. They're apparently as good and as healthy as they're ever going to be. So those 3 guys don't end up in the development lab, at least in our preliminary thoughts. We are going to work on endurance training for the ace, Leo Martinez, Jesse Hoffmeister, Melvin Reyes, and Bob Russell, 3 of the pitchers that we talked about. Hoffmeister and Russell going to be working on their pitch movement, and Luisito Reyes going to work on his secondary pitch improvement. The other four guys that we envision having in the lab are some of the top prospects in our organization. Second baseman Carlos Davila and Alex Gamez, both going to be working on their plate discipline. Pitcher Eric Schweitzer working on his control. And Nils Mensch, the 19-year-old former international amateur free agent signing, going to be working on quality of contact. So a little bit easier than some previous programs, with 6 of these kind of being in the medium difficulty. A couple of hard programs that Martinez and Mensch are going to be working on, but we didn't have the best success rate a year ago in the development lab, at least with these long programs, hoping for a bit more success this year, and mix between 4 guys who will almost certainly be on the major league roster or competing for the major league roster in Martinez, Hoffmeister, Reyes, and Russell, and 4 guys who are more part of our future in terms of Davila, Schweitzer, Gamez, and Mensch being, unless I make some changes based on different thoughts by me or feedback from the worldwide scouting department, the crew that we're likely to use in the development lab as we begin this offseason. And with that, we will call it an episode. Next time around, we will do a deeper dive into the top prospects in our farm system. You can see 3 of the top prospects, 2 of whom are going to be in the development lab for us right here, in Davila and Mensch. Justin Morgan, who we just picked in the first round, also a very highly regarded prospect in our system. Feel like got a number of decisions to make as far as who's ultimately going to make the 26-man roster as far as our pitching staff. As we've talked about, potentially trading away Aaron Bell opens up a little more flexibility for us in terms of giving some of the younger guys a chance in the rotation and or the bullpen, and also saving a little bit of money. Position player-wise, I think certainly the Ted Miller, Ryan Stone, Elian Pena, Anthony Pack Jr., you can see 4 of the 5 left-handed hitters in our primary lineup against right-handed pitching are guys that we've got, at least in some level, decisions to make on this offseason. You can see how well-balanced that roster is, though. Everybody double-digit home runs for the year. Everybody had at least 60 runs batted in as well. So a very deep and well-balanced lineup. And to the extent we can keep as much of that together as possible for next year, should put us in a good situation to potentially try to get back to the playoffs and hopefully win another title when all is said and done. And we will take a look at our farm system next time around and start planning in more detail for the off season in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.